These people call themselves conservatives. They preach freedom, markets, and individual rights. They praise establishment institutions and constitutions and warn about the dangers of going too far, too fast. But what have they actually conserved? In the past 60 years, every major cultural shift has come from the left, and within a decade, conservatives are not just accepting these changes, they're defending them. Modern conservatism, it isn't a movement that preserves tradition, it's a movement that merely manages the slow decay. Real conservatism isn't just about taxes or regulation, it's a philosophy rooted in preservation of family, faith, culture, and order. Edmund Burke once wrote that society is a partnership of not only those who are living, but between those who are living and to those who are dead, and for those who are going to be born. Conservatism in its true form honours this partnership. It sees value in inherited institutions. It resists constant upheaval in favour of continuity. It protects the permanent or things that are thought to be eternal. But just look at today's so-called conservatives. They're not conserving any sense of tradition. They're conserving the liberal victories of 5 to 10 years ago. They've lost the fight on same-sex marriage, and now they'll say, well, at least we'll protect it from radical trans activism. And they've lost the battle on feminism. They celebrate women in the front line, combat roles, single motherhood, and they preach as if these are victories from the right. They've now lost on mass immigration. Now they only argue for legal pathways.
One way to clear the backlog would be to have an amnesty and say all 92,000 can just stay, and then you've got no backlog.
Well, effectively, that's, I think, where we're heading. And that's tragic, isn't it, Jacob, that we could have 92,000 people, and I think the entire backlog's about 170,000, isn't it? But that you could just wave through 170,000 people without genuinely checking them.
Well, ignoring the cultural transformation that the legal immigration causes. Legal immigration being the biggest issue when it comes to immigration. Legal immigration, of course, we all know that is something that everyone should be against, but it's the legal immigration that is that's been the most dangerous.
That unless some drastic change happens, large parts of many of our cities will, by the beginning of the next century, be occupied by a population which has nothing in common with the people of this country.
And he predicts that by 2063, Britain will be minority white British. Is that a concern of yours at all?
Yeah, I don't think that's I haven't seen those predictions, and 2063 is a long way off. But
it's a few decades.
Yeah, it's a few decades. Well, it's I'm trying to do the maths quickly in my head, but it's in most people. I'll be long gone. Put it like that.
The UK is a multi-faith, multi-ethnic, multicultural success story, and we believe that many of our greatest strengths derive from the diversity of our population. One only has to look at our brilliant NHS, one of the largest and most diverse employers in Europe, to see the benefits of being an open, tolerant and welcoming country.
And one of the most disgusting things I've seen recently that modern conservatives do is you'll see some of them saying that our trannies are hotter than your trannies. And this is just some of the saddest and sickest shit that I've heard. But this really encapsulates that whatever side you take, whatever team you go with in politics, you'll be subjected to the same demonic tides that are slowly but surely taking over. In the run for Obama to become president in 2008, he was very openly against gay marriage. But in 2015, it was legalized, and by 2020, or probably earlier, US conservative talk show hosts they were praising gay marriage. They were praising gay Republicans as symbols of freedom. But that's not conservatism, that's just pure capitulation.
Define marriage.
I believe that marriage is the union between a man and a woman.
Would you support a constitutional amendment with that definition?
No, I would not.
But you mentioned recently that you're a Christian, that you go to church. How important is your faith to Donald Trump?
Very important. I'm a Protestant. I'm a Presbyterian. Very important. I'm a believer. I'm also, busy and probably busier than I should be. But I am a Christian. I'm Protestant. I'm Presbyterian.
Pro-life,
I'm pro-life.
Gay marriage, where do you stand?
I'm against gay marriage.
Do you support marriage equality?
It's irrelevant because it was already settled. It's law. It was settled in the Supreme Court. I mean, it's done. And I think I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
And another dumb thing Conservatives say that you probably hear quite a lot of is, I don't care what people do in their own private space, as long as you don't force it upon me or force it upon my children. Which, when you really think about it, when you drill that point down, this gives an opening for people to do whatever they like. And to me, this is a core issue within what is, modern conservatism. They're just libertarians, which in essence, it justifies any and all behaviour, as long as it doesn't, impact other people. But I would argue that certain behaviours, even if it doesn't impact me personally, impacts wider society. Wider society then changes, wider society impacts me. These modern conservatives, they rightfully do argue against things like drag queen story hour, that focuses on grooming children, but they argue that it's still okay as long as it's between consenting adults. But I think if something is not okay for children, absolutely abhorrent for children, which is what these modern conservatives are arguing when it comes to being against the drag queen story hour stuff. But if something's not okay for children, then, 99% of the time, it's also not okay for adults either. Picking your nose, doing drugs, eating junk food, cutting your genitals off, none of this is good behaviour, even if you're 8 years old or 18 years old. In my opinion, and this is something that's clearly lost on modern conservatives, is that certain behaviours should cast shame upon you, your family, and those around you. But any sense of shame is now completely lost in Western society, which is why people parade in the streets but call it pride. It's just a total demonic inversion of tradition. The uncomfortable truth is that conservatives don't conserve because they don't believe in tradition. They've all accepted liberal premises that equality is the highest good, that faith is purely a private matter, that progress in a liberal sense is inevitable, and that the individual is sovereign over family, community, or God. And once you adopt all of these ideas, what remains to be conserved is simply a form of order that is without any spiritual essence. In this way, modern conservatism becomes indistinguishable from yesterday's liberalism. It becomes clean, efficient, and a more polite manager of the decline which we've been subjected to for several decades now. Liberalism hasn't failed because it's been poorly implemented. It's failed because it's succeeded. It's remade man in its own image, rootless, restless, and empty. To understand why modern conservatism is so impotent, that we need to go deeper than politics. We must ask, what is tradition? Now let's very briefly turn to Julius Evola. Evola was not a political conservative in the modern sense. He was a radical traditionalist, a metaphysician who saw history not as progress, but as a degeneration away from the sacred, from what is eternal. In his works such as Revolt Against the Modern World, Evola argues that true tradition is not the past, it is eternal. It is the spiritual order that exists outside of time. A civilization rooted in tradition is one that recognises vertical order, divine over human, spirit over matter, hierarchy over egalitarianism. Evola condemned both liberalism and modern conservatism because they share the same materialist view of man, whether through markets or rights. They've reduced human life to like a horizontal plane of comfort, liberty, and choice. But traditionalism insists there's something higher. And Evola's critique wasn't reactionary. I suppose me using Evola in the argument I'm trying to make is in itself reactionary, but when he wrote it, it was to be not reactionary but transcendental. He did not yearn for the past, but for a reawakening of a sacred kingship. His traditionalism is incompatible with the modern Enlightenment, based on the modern liberal order we're in. And that also includes what most modern conservatives believe. True traditionalism is not about right versus left. It's about sacred versus profane. It's about order versus chaos. It's about essence over substance. So what does it look like to truly restore tradition? Because it's not about a nostalgic romanticism or an aggressive reaction. It's about reordering life individually, culturally, and spiritually around principles that transcend modernity itself. A traditionalist reordering of things would mean quite a few things that I don't have time to cover, but one of the main ones would be rebuilding hierarchy. Beginning with the family, fathers the head, mothers the hearth, extending to the community, clergy, and principled leadership rooted in authority, not popularity. And while there's quite a few more things I can cover that I'll just list here, these are not purely aesthetic preferences. They are ontological necessities in a world that has forgotten its foundation. As René Guénon wrote, that only by reconnecting to the metaphysical principles can civilization recover its axis. Without that, any and all reform and progress is just purely decoration to the already crumbling core. And we live in a time of a great unravelling, that conservatives clinging to yesterday's victories are little more than as we said before, a managed decline. While liberalism kills the body, it's modern conservatism that kills the soul. But for those with eyes to see, the path forward is clear. It is the path of tradition, not mere resistance to change, but radical orientation to what is eternally true. If modernity offers pure freedom, we must seek some level of form. And if it offers limitless autonomy, then we must seek some form of authority. And in the words of Julius Evola again, or to paraphrase, the true man of tradition does not look to the past with longing. He walks among the ruins, but he himself is not ruined. And so when we get down to it, the real question of modern politics, it's not left versus right. The question is, it's sacred or profane. It's cosmos over chaos. It's tradition or the abyss.